Right, okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Finance and General Purposes and Personnel Joint Committees meeting for Tuesday the 10th of April. And first item on the agenda, item 1758, is apologies for absence, please.
I haven't had any apologies.
None received. Everybody's here except for Councillor Oakes N. So we've item 5802 to accept apologies. We've had no apology to accept. So moving on to 1759, declarations of interests. To receive and consider any declarations of interest from members and officers under section 50 of the Local Government Act 2000. That's our Standing Order 35. This requirement applies only in respect of matters which are to be considered by the Council at this meeting. That's 5901, to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests. No. 5902, to declare any other interests. No. Okay. 1760, representations from interested parties.
No, I haven't had any.
Nothing being declared, no members of the public present. 1761, consideration of requests from interested parties. None of those received either. 1762, minutes of the previous meetings, finance and general purposes. You've got them in your pack.
Okay. That's personal.
Those present for the last, that's personnel committee I've got there, that's
Yeah.
finance. Finance is on here first. So present at that one last time were myself, Councillor Chappell, Councillor Chesser and Councillor Peel. So if there are no queries.
Sorry, you're just doing them in a different order to the agenda, I really must say.
Sorry?
You're doing them in a different order to how they appear on the agenda.
I've put the personnel ones as well because you're joint at the moment, but I know you're technically not. But then it would mean you're not technically a Finance and General Purposes Committee meeting either. So then you either don't do any of the minutes from the previous meetings or you do both.
It seems to me logical to do both.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
Right, so I'm taking, it was headed Finance and General Purpose.
So
I,
then under it there is, I'll put
Yeah.
the personnel ones in
I
there
went
as
for
well.
the finance minutes first, not realising they're 6202, so I can see why it's thrown you. But unless there are any queries on those minutes, can I have a proposer? Councillor Chesser and a seconder, please.
Are we talking about the finance?
Finance one.
Yeah.
You'll second those. Okay, and those in favour of those who were present. That's everybody who was present at the meeting. Today's day is the 10th, isn't it? Right, and we come to 6201 to approve and sign the minutes of the Personnel Committee meeting held on the 14th of November as an accurate record, our Standing Order 10C.
can I just clarify, and it may be right, but 171003, it talks about to discuss staff appraisal schedule for 2017. Bearing in mind it was the 14th of November, was it covering the period between then
I think
and the end of the
it
year,
was
or
going to try.
is it actually this year?
It's trying to cover this like year that we're in, you know, this council year, but I think I'm going to probably struggle to do that as well, because since then people have left and we're struggling
So
with
it's
numbers.
correct in the minute, but
Yeah.
it may be that the appraisals on
It's going to be, yeah, in 2018, yeah.
Okay, fine.
Basis on proposed. You propose prepared to propose them. Do I have a seconder, please? Those, Councillor Chesser is seconding. Those who were present, that's myself, Councillor Chesser, Councillor Chappell and Councillor Humphreys. Those in favour? Thank you. That's everybody who was present. Thank you. Right. Financial matters, item 1763, 176301 to receive the balance sheet, bank reconciliation, budget account and hub account for March 2018.
Okay, look at it. Paul, you can present them.
Yeah. And I've implemented what was suggested last time, which was you have the bank reconciliation for all three major accounts and any unpresented cheques, and all of those are proven behind the documents you have. Unless anyone's got any questions about those. And all the budgets you've got, they will change before the end of the year. There's a number of, obviously we get invoices late, we get statements through late, and sometimes the statements don't agree with what we say, so you follow them up and chase up any invoices.
Can I just ask you about that actually? On the current liabilities, I did check against the previous month, and there's a £2,000 or £3,000 difference, so you must have corrected February.
It might well have been late invoices coming through.
I think it'd be a good idea if you just let me know, so I won't ask the question in future.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
So any invoice that comes through late.
Well, yeah, any major adjustments to the February figures, or the previous month's figures.
Yeah, okay.
There's also a small adjustment to the debtors account, it's only £180 or something like that.
And sometimes it's where, again, thanks then, yeah, I will do. Things like the Fletton House tenants, that looks like it's low, but it's not, because we've been waiting for the preschool invoice, which has now gone through. I'll be doing that over the next 2 days, which will correct that one. Does anyone have any particular queries, Mike?
Well, CS and environment and highways.
Community safety and environment.
Yeah,
So
we had a budget of 22,550 for community safety.
Well, that's where we had £20,000 budget for Snide Meadow, which we only spent £4,000.
I understand.
So that's £16,000 short on that one.
And we're slightly up on hub staff costs.
Yeah, which we're all aware of, I think. Other items which stand out are things like Fletton House, gives the impression we're £30,000 better off than budget. But I don't quite know how, but we budgeted £9,000 for gas, it was only £2,000. But I'm sure that over the next year that will readjust itself. Youth services were budgeted for £6,000, which we haven't spent. And marketing, we only spent £1,000 out of £15,000, and that's where that sum total comes to. The PWLB loans, if you're not aware of that one, the figures which go on the profit and loss are only ever the interest paid. So the difference of the £11,000 there is the one capital entry that we pay out, or two, one for the courthouse and one for the Queen Victoria Hall. In theory, you should have a separate budget for that. There's only one entry on it, so it doesn't seem worthwhile. Does anyone else have any other questions on the budgeting or?
On hub trading now.
Yeah, okay.
Just remind me, I've been away for 3 months. Does it include electricity costs and shared costs, please?
No.
So there's 16,346. Doesn't include any overhead costs.
It includes everything which is on that list.
Okay. Yes, all right.
Yeah.
So it's a substantial loss, isn't it? Okay.
But it's better this month than it has been.
Good.
It was in profit this month as opposed to other months, which is a positive.
We're in profit this month?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Well, you're in profit as against direct costs, you're not in profit as against overall costs.
But in the context of what it's been like for the past year.
Comparing like with like.
So always good to see a positive.
I wasn't that, because they...
Well, we put the prices up a lot.
Sorry?
We put the prices up and margins have improved. I don't know if that's the reason.
And also, that's one of the reasons, and I don't think we've had quite as many staff to pay out,
No.
No.
which I think is another query.
Does it work well with their staff? Has it been noticeable? I suppose this question's got to be asked.
We've had a couple of issues where we haven't had enough staff, so we've had to either shut the kitchen and just do cake or and coffee and tea. And then we did have to shut for a number of days last week because we hadn't got enough staff.
I mean, it's a sort of, seems to me like it's something that we should be monitoring quite closely, is to finally adjust where the balance is of staff against everything else, to try and bring that 16 into, you know, into a better picture. Seems logical if we monitor it quite carefully, I think.
I agree.
Okay.
Can I move on? Any other questions?
Can I just say, before we do move on there, that you've got a hub staff figure shown, and then you've got the employer's national insurance and the employer's pension. Holiday pay would appear in the staffing figure, so that's one of the overheads that doesn't appear as a separate entity, but you add those together and you're at 61, nearly 62,000, when you think that your income is 76,700. You're spending almost everything that you receive in wages, and that's not taking into account your purchases and any of your other direct costs or
That's what I mean. The staffing level seems to be the thing that's causing the problem.
It's a huge, huge problem.
I don't mean a problem, but you know, it seems to be the thing that's the drain.
It is.
No, we're not taking enough money to cover the staff. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah, and the other issue is we're looking closely at, having put the prices up and having looked carefully at what sort of margins we're making on each line that we sell. When you compare if you add together the hub wet and dry, which are the two figures for purchases, and you compare that against sales, the purchases are about a third of the sales, and yet the markups on the foodstuffs are considerably higher than that. So we're still bewildered as to why that figure isn't higher, why that gap isn't higher, why we're not perhaps at 4 times. The purchases are not a quarter of sales, or sales 3 times the purchases, whichever way around you want to look at it, but 4 times the purchaser's price. So we're still looking at why that is.
Paul, have you got any, shed any light on that or not?
Not on that particular item, no, but there was something that came through in the payroll for this year because the national minimum wage is going up. And there's a note on the bottom to say to encourage employers to engage younger staff. They will not be required to pay employer national insurance on the earnings they pay to under 21s up to £892 per week, which will be, so in theory, if we employ people who are under 21, that'll be significantly better for everybody.
Right.
Because I don't think we'll be paying anyone more than £1,000 a week. So if anyone's got any grandchildren,
I have, but he's only 2.
minimum wage, youth opportunity scheme.
And he's already employed by me.
Start early.
Actually, to be honest, I thought we'd actually said on the hub, because we know it's losing money and we know that it's not viable at the moment, but we've got to make a decision in October, as I understood, we talked about this last time, whether we close it, support it as a community venture, or cut it back. And to be honest, I mean, I know we talk about this every finance meeting that I've been to. I really can't see the point now in sort of talking too much about it, because in October we've got to sit down and we've got to go through everything, page by page, biscuit by biscuit, to see what we're going to do about it.
Yes.
I think that's when we really got to start making a decision. In regard to the profit margins, I would assume that we might be making, 400% on a piece of cake, but we've got to sell the whole cake, and if the whole cake isn't sold, 50% of it might be thrown away.
Wastage could be one of the reasons.
Exactly, yeah. So we've got to look at that. But as I say, I think because we're going on about it all the time, we can't really do anything until we sit down properly in October and make that
I still think
decision.
we should report it to for the Finance Committee.
Oh, no, I agree, no. I agree that we should report it to the Finance Committee. I'm not saying we shouldn't, Malcolm.
Okay.
But to actually go over the same things
Yeah.
every Finance Committee, when we know that at the moment, for some reason, we can't make it pay.
Yeah.
And if somebody doesn't come up with some bright ideas in the Finance Committee to cut it down, really, we've just got to wait till October and sit down and then decide.
Well, that's what I meant by monitoring.
Yeah, well, yeah, we are
Between
monitoring.
now and, no, but we're constantly monitoring,
Yeah.
because that wastage thing is huge, and if you've got to pay this size, you don't sell it, why making it?
Well, they claim downstairs they've got very little wastage.
They assure us they've got very low wastage, apart from special circumstances. I mean, I know I went into the hub the day before we closed for Easter, Thursday, and there were, I think, 3 cakes. They were about half consumed. That's 10 slices per cake. There were about 5 slices worth on each of the cakes, perhaps a bit more on one of them. And they were having to go out because we wouldn't be open. They couldn't go back in the freezer. We weren't going to be open again until the following Thursday or Friday. So there was no way they would have kept, and in that case, anything that was out and in use that day was wasted. So that was an exceptional day when there was a high wastage, but I do think that that is an exception. We need to make sure it remains an exception.
Not just buy smaller cake tins, not just.
In the run-up to that, perhaps we shouldn't have had the variety of cake on that we did. We should perhaps have had 1 or 2 cakes on instead of 3 on
Anyway, I
that
think
day.
that's something you and I can look at when we have the hub meetings. So,
Yeah.
I think it's a monster.
It's something that needs whoever is managing the unit at that particular day or cooking the cakes at that particular moment should be monitoring themselves. It should be sort of something, oh, this is crazy, I'm throwing 10 cakes away a day, they should profit down the toilet. So,
okay, well, leave it to, 3 of us, Roy and myself, try and address the problem.
Okay. Do we have any more on the accounts from anybody? Okay, we'll move on then to 6302 to review the contract for the HR consultant. This again is in your pack. You'll see that Chris Moses has been with us since March of 2008, so he's been with us 10 years. But he has written to us, to me in particular, a couple of times lately, saying that we're in breach of his contract in the way that we're operating, indicating that he's not happy with the way we're operating with him. I mean, he's certainly done us a very good service in the past in many instances, although there have been 1 or 2 errors lately. I don't know whether there is a reason for that, but I know there were a couple of errors. One was some documents went out with a wrong name on. Another one went out with all sorts of clauses in that ought to have been found and removed from a contract. Things like share issues which are not part of relevant to us. They might be to somebody else's contract. And we did have a case of an email going to somebody who is not a councillor and not even anything to do with the council, but another client of his was emailed with confidential information about the council. So I thought it was time to have a look at this contract. He keeps telling us that we're in breach of bits of it. I've been through the contract very carefully and trying to see what we might be doing that's in breach of it. I am wondering, he is a very long way away from us. Sometimes it seems very remote, whether we would be better off with somebody closer to home. I'll leave it open to the floor for the moment to see what Councillor
Do
Peel.
you want to go first, David?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay. Well, I've actually looked back at what the HR consultant has done for us, really over the last 6 to 8 months, and there are 1 or 2 mistakes, but on the whole, from what the emails he's sent in, especially in regards to grievances and other things, I've found fairly consistent, fairly good, and very informative. So on that side, I don't think there's a problem. I really don't. I have to wonder, the breach I'm thinking of possibly is the fact that you have introduced a solicitor that goes to and sort of comments on his work. And I don't know if that's a breach of his contract, I've no idea, but I believe that might be what he's referring to. I don't know.
No.
And I just think that I don't think it's broken, and I don't see why we've got to try and mend it, because honestly don't think it's broken. I think what we should do is maybe sit down with the man and say, look, we're not happy with one of these 2 of these points. Can we sort them out between us? Because he has acted on behalf of this council, as you said, for 10 years. Most of the work I've read about has been quite adequate and quite good. I can't honestly see any reason to actually just dump him just like that, or even sort of have a look at his contract without talking to him first. I think that's really important. I think as a council, we've been really served by him very, very well in the past. And I really can't see why we have to sort of just pull the rug from under his feet without talking to him first, properly, sitting down and going through everything with him. I think it's just not fair, and it's a matter of trust. I think we've got to trust HR people. This guy, over 10 years, has built a good, trustful relationship with us. I just really don't think we should sort of just do, you know, go for another, have a look at his contract and say, well, we don't like this, we're going to find somebody else. I don't think it's nice, and it's not what we should be doing.
How much communication do you have with him?
I haven't. I've read all the communications that have been sent through to all of us. So I've just read what he's been doing. You know what we've read about the grievances, all that sort of thing. I've read in detail with those, and I'm quite happy with what he's done for us. I can't say that I've read everything, because that's not true, and I won't say that. However, you know, I do think that before we get rid of anybody that's been with this council 10 years, we should sit down in all honesty and talk to the man. Not just, right, well, we're going to review your contract, and if we're not happy, we'll come and get somebody else. We must sit down and talk to them. We've got to have trust in this council. And if we don't have trust, we might as well just give up now. And I really do think that's one of the things I would like to say. Anyway, so that's just my point of view. David,
Anybody else?
would like to?
Well,
Councillor.
I remember, as it were, the time before we had Chris Moses and his company on board, and there is no doubt at all that it added value to this council to have available to us the sort of ongoing advice that this man can and has provided us with. And it's not just in connection with what I might call the more contentious issues, it's also the everyday issues. making sure that we don't fall foul of legislative traps because some new legislation has been introduced, making sure that our contracts of employment are compliant, etc., etc. If you like the nuts and bolts stuff, the unglamorous stuff, the stuff that you and I don't tend to see unless we perhaps are sitting in a mayor's chair or something. And even then, a lot of it is done quietly in liaison between that business and our clerk. Clearly, if there is a scenario in which he doesn't appear to be entirely happy with us and we don't even entirely understand why, then we do need to sit down with him and thrash that out. And probably the best way, and he's done it before, would be to invite him to attend a personnel committee meeting and in essence have a full and frank discussion, possibly behind closed doors, because some of this would be commercially sensitive stuff, in order that, if you like, we understand where he thinks we might be going wrong, so that we don't fall into that trap again, and to raise any concerns that we have about things that have gone wrong at the other end. And let's face it, anyway, as we run a business, you don't get it right 100% of the time. The trick is, if you get it wrong, to learn from that and make sure that you certainly don't repeat the same mistake. You end up making a different one sooner or later. But something like him probably ensures that we make it less frequently than we otherwise might. If we were to replace him, we would certainly have to go out there and find somebody else. That could be like frying pans and fires. This is a known quantity. Going to somebody new might not be. And the role that he performs is a very different role to that of the kind of employment law consultant that we've engaged. It is unlikely you'd go to your employment law consultant and ask him or her to draw up or vet a contract of employment, or to provide you advice about a maternity pay issue or what have you. That's what this kind of person is for. It's only when, if you like, you are getting into what I call the contentious areas, that perhaps having the advice of an independent solicitor, and we know the issues we've had around legal helplines and so on, and I think that there is much to be said for the fact that we've now got, I call it a tame solicitor on tap to whom we can go, but she isn't supplanting this person, she's supplementing this person. So my recommendation would be this, that we should certainly get him in to talk to us and have those issues out. Whether, as part and parcel of that process, we start to look around and make inquiries about what else is out there is another matter. That's perfectly legitimate to consider that. If you look at the agreement that was drawn up in 2008, and I'm not sure whether I've ever seen it before, or if I did it was 10 years ago and I've forgotten. It's terminable on either side, if you like, without any notice periods. So if we did decide that we found somebody else that we felt could do a better job for the same or less cost, and who might otherwise be convenient, yeah, we might want to effect a change. But at this stage, I suggest we stick with what we've got, even though we make inquiries about the possibility of going to a different provider at some point in the future.
Any more comments?
Just to say I agree completely with Councillor Chapman and Councillor Peel. I mean, I think the best line of action, you can't have a grievance. It would be wrong of us to walk away from an agreement without consulting him personally and finding out exactly what's going on and making that amends. That's just plain good manners.
I'm quite happy to do that. Quite believe we need to do that with him. But there have been suggestions in the recent past, that we ought to get a different HR consultant. That suggestion has been made to us.
Okay, can I ask who by?
One by this new solicitor.
Okay, so
who said...
when did she say this? Because I've not heard this before.
at a meeting that Councillor Chesser and I had with this new solicitor.
And why wasn't it brought up before then?
I don't know whether, well, why would it be brought up?
Well, I mean, if you're now sort of saying you've had a meeting with a solicitor
Yeah.
that the council didn't know about, why
No,
wasn't it brought up?
no, council did know about. Council approved us to go and talk to a solicitor.
About the HR consultant?
No,
So
about.
it wasn't about the HR consultant, it was about something else?
It was
that
about
you
something
brought it
else,
up?
and in the course of that, one of her bits of advice was that she was less than happy with his performance.
I see. Okay. When are we going to get a full report out about this meeting? Because I think, I'm not being horrible, but I think if you're having these meetings with solicitors and things like that, you are a member of the council, same as Councillor Chesser is, and those things should be brought before the council, not kept between three of people. They should be brought in the open into the council. Why hasn't it been done?
That's exactly what I'm doing right now.
No, you weren't, because we just brought it up. Otherwise, if we hadn't have sort of said to that, you wouldn't have brought it up.
Why wouldn't I have brought it up?
Because you just said you had the meeting, but that's not. That was when was it? When was the meeting?
That meeting was back in February.
So why wasn't it brought up in February, March?
It was. It came
But
to.
you didn't say anything about the HR consultant in February.
No,
That wasn't an issue.
it wasn't an issue.
So why is it an issue now? I'm just trying to. You see, I'm not being horrible. What I want to see is open council.
Yeah.
And it seems to me all of a sudden we're getting.
This is not
almost like
not
a Paul
anything
King
other than open
situation
council.
again.
This is absolutely open council.
Okay, well let's not go into that. I just think that we should have had this information given to the council before today. I'm sorry, I do.
Well, I don't know when you would have had it because, you know, the issue hasn't come up. That solicitor said an awful lot of things in that meeting, a lot of which you won't have heard.
Well, can we not have that?
We covered the relevant things. We spent something like, what, 3 hours with that solicitor? If you want to spend 3 hours, we'll go through everything we discussed with that solicitor.
To be honest, Roy, I think yes we should.
Right, well then we'll
Not
have a
today,
meeting
because
where
have
we will
got
go
to
through in depth everything
But I
we
think-
talked about with that solicitor.
Honestly, if you're going into a solicitor,
Yeah.
and I'm not trying to be horrible about this,
No.
but we are, when Malcolm and I came in, not so much yourself, because you came in just slightly after, didn't you? But when Malcolm and I came into this council, the one thing that Councillor Chesser, Councillor Chappell, the Hoaxes and yourself all told us were there were secrets going on in the council with Paul King and things like that.
Yeah, there are none of those now.
Well, there is, because there's a 3-hour meeting that we haven't had any information about. I'm sorry, but that to me means that we need to have that information. And I'm not trying to be horrible when I say this,
Right,
but
let
we
me speak.
don't want the same thing happening again
Right.
that we've had with Paul King.
No, we don't. Now let me speak.
Yes, please.
Right. We briefed you after we had that meeting with the solicitor and we told you what happened at that meeting in outline. Right. And we told you the relevant facts there and then that night of the information that the solicitor had given us based on hearing two of us and the documents that we'd shown the solicitor. And we told you what we thought that night was relevant.
Right, but you didn't actually tell us everything, like for instance the HR thing.
No.
But you see, that's what I'm saying, Roy.
No.
We need to have all that information. Now, as I say, I'm not being horrible. I just worry that if we're going to have one or
just
two
a comment
things...
that came up in the meeting. I mean, I wasn't there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, but-
it's not. It wasn't the objective of the meeting.
No.
No, but it's still...
And now it's relevant. They're talking about it quite
but
openly.
it was in
So I
the
think you're
yes.
making a big fuss over this.
No, I
unnecessarily.
don't think I am. I think we've got to be open. It's part of
Well,
the
they're not
parcel
being
of what's
not open.
happening. Last time, the council...
You
wasn't
weren't
open.
here in the days when things were
No, I
going
wasn't,
on.
and that's what I don't want to happen
No.
again, Roy.
No.
So I'm not trying to be horrible.
We have a lot more
I am
openness
just
and transparency.
I'm just trying to keep everything open.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that's
I
important
might have a
to
chat
me.
with you after about openness then.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if you want to talk about openness, I might have some things to say myself, but I don't want to say them in a meeting.
I'm quite happy to be open
Right.
about it, Roy.
That's not
I'm
being
quite happy to
Open
be
between the
open.
two of them.
Oh, well,
Yeah, but we
Can I,
don't.
can I just add my 2 minutes?
yeah.
I think it's quite wise for us to at least be looking or keeping in touch with the sector, because there have been occasions when Chris Moses has said, you are breaking the terms of my agreement. And the day may come when he says, right, that's it, and we'll be lost because we won't have anybody else to go to. We won't know anybody else, and we're going to have to start looking. So it's about just taking precautions, if you like. Just being aware.
You always
nothing
need to have a
drastic.
plan B, and I think Councillor Chapel's idea is
Yeah, I think we need to speak to him because
Sorry,
I think we do need to speak to Chris,
yeah.
Absolutely.
find out
I
what
agree.
breaches are.
Yes, that's what we want to know. Absolutely.
Also, he may not be happy with his contract, you know, so he's on a retainer, isn't he, I believe? I don't know if that's covering the workload he's got now.
I don't think it is.
Well, probably.
You know, he's doing an
He
awful
hasn't.
lot of work for not much money.
Absolutely.
So,
Which
Councillor
we
Chapel,
appreciate.
you wanted to come
Can
back
I
in?
just add one other thing? I mean, it seems to me that despite the fact we've spoken quite some time on this, we're broadly in agreement that we should have him come to a personnel committee meeting and have a discussion. I think that there is a general feeling that it would be wise to look elsewhere as well,
yeah.
for all the reasons Councillor Chesham's indicated. But also, if it is indeed the case that the solicitor that we have approached has, in the course of providing general advice to the council, made some observations, I think it would be helpful before we have our meeting with Chris Moses, if those who were present at the meeting with the solicitor could just provide us with a kind of synopsis of what it was the solicitor said specifically in relation to this arrangement we have with Chris Moses. What is it that's made her say that she thinks we should potentially be looking elsewhere? Because I am currently in the dark as to what exactly that is. I don't know how much detail she went into. If there is some detail, if there's more information that could be given, that could simply be circulated between us prior to the meeting. Indeed, it might be better that it's done that way than in an open meeting that we're having at this point. So that would be my suggestion, a sort of three-part approach to all of this. Circulation of a minute of that part of that meeting so that we are aware of all those points. Meeting with Chris Moses with the full personnel committee, and in the meantime, perhaps the clerk could look at what alternative providers might be available, would they be up for retainers, etc., based around a similar arrangement to what we currently see.
There were no real specific details. It was a comment made by the solicitor that she felt that we weren't getting, she wasn't entirely happy with his work. That was the comment.
Well, we can look through our notes and find them. Find it.
I mean, it may be that we should go back to her in that case and ask her to clarify
Absolutely.
why she was saying that, because it seems pretty fundamental.
Absolutely. Once again, wise words from Councillor Chapel as always. And I think that's that we can't pursue any of this without knowing exactly what she's finding forward. And you certainly can't approach Chris Moses without having that information either.
No, we need
As a
to
full
know
council.
from him
So-
what it is that we're
And
doing.
I have to say, I have a little bit of empathy with Councillor Peel with this, that I understand exactly where he's coming from about this, and I think the Councillor Chapel's recommendations, we will probably get to that point without actually having to resort to...
We're all in agreement, actually. We're talking about now. Keep the door open to somebody else. So,
Yeah. But I certainly don't think there's been any attempt to keep anything hidden from anybody. Certainly not by me. Having been through what we've been through, you are certainly told an awful lot more than you would have been 2 years ago.
Good. I just want to keep it like that.
Yeah, well, it's
got to stay like that.
yeah.
Let's move
Yeah.
on now.
Yeah,
I agree.
We're falling into the same trap.
So we're now moving to 6303 to authorise a free, no obligation financial health check. A person by the name of Anthony Pilkington has offered me the opportunity for us to have a free, no obligation check of our accounts. and give us a report of what he feels our reports are, our accounts are like. And I think that is too good an opportunity to miss.
I would like to, I mean, no objection to a free, no obligation financial report by anybody, providing they're qualified and they know what they're doing.
Yes.
I would point out though that, I mean, what, in November last year we had a VAT man come in and check everything, and he was reasonably happy with what's happened. We've had an internal and an external audit after that, and we've got another internal audit coming fairly soon, haven't we?
Yes.
So,
Those are limited in scope.
well, I don't understand limited.
The VAT consultant was not happy. And you've read the report of the consultant.
Sorry?
You've read the report of the
I have
consultant.
read briefly.
Yeah.
I wasn't
Yeah,
here.
and he is not at all happy.
Right.
He's not at all happy.
Can I
with
have
that.
a copy of that again then? Because I actually didn't read it
Yes.
all, I didn't have time.
Yeah, but that,
But what I'm saying is we did have the VAT report, we had the external and internal report, and we're having another
you
internal
had internal and external reports last year in well, mid-year, towards the end of the last financial year. The only thing you've seen so far is a letter from the auditor saying they've come for a preliminary meeting,
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
what they've called an interim audit.
Yeah, yeah.
They've raised one or two things that they're coming back to look at, but you haven't had an audit report there yet.
No. That was no. What I'm saying
No.
is we've got an internal report or
Yeah.
internal audit coming up fairly soon because it's the end of the financial year.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? I haven't been involved in this, whether it's free, whatever it is. Are they going to look at the systems we've got here as well, which the auditor wouldn't?
Well, the Sage system you've got, and so has Roy got, haven't you?
I haven't got it.
No.
Mine's disappeared.
No.
You've got
I
it.
lost it when I upgraded the computer. I might be able to recover it.
So where's that disappeared to then?
Well, this is on my computer. This is my own version.
No.
of Sage.
I thought you'd had the Sage from the council.
We have given you a
I have.
CSV
Yeah.
file.
I have CSV
transaction.
files. I have, it's nothing to do with Sage, but it's a printout from Sage.
Oh right.
In a
All
different
the
format.
Print out, not the
Yeah,
actual
in a
Sage.
spreadsheet form that
No.
I look at of the accounts from time to time.
Right.
You've had a sign-on as well.
I didn't ask for a sign-on. I was given a sign-on at the same time as Councillor Glenn asked for a sign-on, and I've never
Didn't
ever
ask for a
used it.
sign-on. Why did you get a sign-on? You must have asked for it.
I've told you since to cancel it because I don't use it. I've never
So you
have
did
used
ask for
it.
it in the first place.
No, I didn't ask for it.
So we
It
just
was-
decided to give you it.
It was asked for at the same time as Councillor Glenn,
Oh, so it's like a bit of backup and work on Sage, my own version of Sage.
and I was given a log on at the same
My own
time,
version of Sage has now disappeared, and I did some work on the computer, so they went wrong.
which I'd never used and never wanted.
As I said,
Never ever been
I'm not
into it.
complaining. I just wondered if it was another layer of auditors that we've got coming in. That's all. That's why I was.
Well, it's free.
You know, I know it's free, but what I'm saying is just
Free.
another layer. Although we've got so
Well,
many
they're
figures
not really
coming out of
auditors. I think they're
our
looking at
heads.
The whole system and the way we're running Sage and so on. I don't
Yeah,
know, I'm just guessing, but I haven't been involved in this.
Yeah, that's exactly what they want to do. They want to have a look at our Sage system. Councillor Chapel.
No objection in principle to a free financial health check, but I would like A, clarity about exactly what that entails so that we can gauge its worth, and B, I've never heard of Anthony Pilkington, I think he was a footballer of that name. So something about who he is in the CV.
Credentials, I think.
And perhaps we should actually have this information before we actually make a decision, otherwise we're just opening up a whole load of confidential records to somebody who could be anybody as far as I
I
know.
don't think we have to open up any confidential records.
No, the person concerned is a chartered accountant. They have a reason for offering this to us, which will come up later. But for the time being,
Sorry, what is the reason? Roy? I'm not being horrible, but
no, you're not being
I'm
horrible.
not being horrible, you said.
No, all I'm saying
Keep
is
saying
openness.
this. Yeah,
If there's a reason, can't we know the reason?
you will know the reason shortly. Yes, you will know the reason this evening.
Right, fine.
Yeah. But what I will say is, this guy is a chartered accountant. He's MD of a firm with a number of chartered accountants who will go through and look at what they want to do is to be sent a backup copy, just the accounts, not all the other stuff. They don't need all the records of creditors and debtors and all the rest of it, but they need just the financial records. They've laid down exactly how they would like a backup to be done and sent to them, so that they can then look at a backup copy of our accounts. And then they will go through it. They will take a couple of days to do that, and at the end of a couple of days they will send a full financial report of what they think the accounts are like.
Well, in that case, I would agree with Councillor Chappell that we should have detailed who it is and what it is, etc., etc.
Yep.
And then, if we all feel safe about that, then I don't.
So you're going to delay it for another meeting?
I don't know.
Why don't you just let Roy or myself, as head of finance, look at these people and decide whether it should be done?
Well,
it's not going to cost anything. There's no risk.
No, I'm not saying there's no. I'm not saying
we're going to delay things.
It's just that if we have the information in front of us, that's what I'm saying. I just would prefer to know who it is. That's all.
Yep. They will take all the necessary precautions under data protection laws as well.
They would. Sure they would.
But it's a chance to have this thing done for free and to have another impartial report on our accounts.
Well, I think it can't do any harm. It can only
I'm not. No, Malcolm, as I said to you, I'm quite happy to have a free financial report. I'm not complaining about that at all.
Not surprising, is it really?
I agree with Councillor Chappell that we should know more about the company. That's what I'm saying. I don't need to have an ins and outs and his inside leg measurement. I just need to have a feeling of security, if you like, that whoever's got our accounts and is looking at our accounts has the correct type of company that we want to deal with.
But
if in the future
we
did
do in the future, it could help us understand the systems better and improve them. So.
Would you like me to contact them?
Well, I just think we should just have a little bit more.
And get a bit more information?
Well,
Find out what they want?
Personally, I wouldn't be happy to authorise it tonight without more information about them and about exactly what this financial health check will ultimately show. As I say, I've got no objection to the idea in principle, because if it is genuinely free, because they want to demonstrate their potential to us, fine. But before I am happy at the idea of other people getting any information out of this council, certainly information that perhaps is not publicly available, then I want to be sure that we're frankly doing it responsibly. I'm sure we are. I'm sure these people are perfectly good. But I don't want to make that decision tonight without more information about what and why, frankly.
What information would you like?
I'd like, if you like, some clear idea of who these people are in this firm, and, as I say, exactly what this report will show.
And have they done this sort of work before for other councils?
And that's all, yeah.
I mean, there's no good taking some account from down the road. He's never ever seen this sort of thing before.
As I said, would you like me to contact them and get this information for the next meeting?
I personally would, but I think it's a question of whether this committee feels that
I'd like to
either authorise it tonight or delay it for the reason I said.
I'd like to delay it, but not till another meeting. I'd like to delay it till later on this same agenda, and there is a reason for that.
I'm open to the idea of coming back to it.
Right, I'd like to do that.
That might assist me.
Exactly that. I'd like to come back to that item.
Come back to that under item 5 then, Councillor Chapman.
Let's defer it and see.
Somebody offers me a free health check on my car, I take it.
It depends on
I'm entirely sure. If I gave you a free health check on your car, I'd be very wary about applying brakes in our I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, but clearly I would know who's doing it. I would not just let...
That's why I want to know who's doing it.
Should we get on to the next one?
Anyway, we've said that we're going to find out more, so let's leave it and come back.
Right, 6304, to discuss the full implications of the Reverend Roy Sparks account. I mentioned at an earlier meeting that it had come to our notice in November that since August of 2016 we'd had an account, a Sainsbury's account, supplying goods for the hub, and that account was in the name of Reverend Roy Sparks. It was then changed to Roy Sparks. That had been going on for some considerable time. I'm led to believe that this is some kind of joke. I certainly don't find it in very good taste. It's been going on behind my back for all that time. It just makes me wonder, and that's why I want financial health checks and other things, is if things like that pop up that have been there for well over 18 months and nobody knew about them, what else is in there we don't know about? And I think anybody who wants to stop any kind of a health check needs to ask that question. We had 2 years when a private venture was being run from inside this council, and I have the proof of that. I have the proof of that. That went on inside this council.
So what proof do you have of that?
I'll give that proof later on.
Can I just say, I understand, and I understand your fury about it, because if somebody had taken my name, and used it on the account, I wouldn't be very happy about it. But hasn't that now been stopped and altered and finished with?
It wasn't for a very long while.
No, I know that. I know.
No.
That's what I'm saying. I know it's done, and I know obviously you're
I
not happy
found
about it. But is it not finished now?
Yeah, I was changed in January.
Yeah.
Right, but it went on from August 2016 until January 2018.
And this was.
It went on.
It wasn't this the guy Prince that did this.
Initially, yes. Yeah.
We had this conversation when all this blew up, didn't we?
We did. I brought it to council because I wanted it out in the open.
Yeah.
Anybody looking at our accounts is going to think I'm on some kind of a backhander. I want to make sure that
It was Fletton House address though, it wasn't your private address as well.
No,
So-
but even so,
But the account was
if somebody
our account.
steals somebody else's data, they send it to their address, not your address. They steal your data, they take it elsewhere. And that's exactly what was happening here. Councillor Chesser, hang on, Councillor Chesser mentioned this to a police officer who immediately said this is fraud. I immediately followed up, spoke to a police officer who again said it's fraud. I am going to follow this through. I'm also going to bring a case against the council. I've been to solicitors, I've been advised that I can sue. This is defamation of me, this is stealing my identity, and I am going to sue Oundle Town Council over this. So I want the council to know it, and I want something done about it. I'm sorry, this is not just going to go on and be hidden. This needs to be dealt with.
I don't think anybody's trying to hide it, Roy.
No.
I mean, I'm not being horrible, but we've talked about
again.
this several times before, and I totally agree. If that had happened to me, I'd be as upset as you, and I can see your point of view. Obviously, if you're going to sue the council, then that's a different kettle of fish. I don't want to get involved with that, because obviously I'll be on the other side to you then, and so therefore I don't think the councillors really can say a lot about it, can we?
I thought that whole thing was done and dusted.
So did I.
Account closed down.
No, it's not done.
Right,
Councillor
David's
Chapel.
had his hand up.
Well, bearing in mind what the Mayor has just said, the question arises as to whether some form of disclosable interest actually occurs. If the Mayor is proposing to sue the council of which he is the chair, the question must arise, should he participate in any debate? But over and above that point, what I want to understand is what is it that we are being asked to do as a council? Because like everybody else around this table, I had thought that this distressing issue, and I can understand what the Mayor is as annoyed about this as he is, because frankly if it had been me, I'd have been equally as annoyed. But the matter has stopped, and if it is to be continued in some way, we need a clear idea of where we're continuing it to and with what objective. Now, if that is to find a person responsible and do something about it, whether it be through a civil process or whatever, then fine, you know, as long as I understand what it is that we as a council are being asked to do. But at the moment, what I seem to be understanding is that the mayor is proposing to sue his own council, which I think makes his position extraordinarily difficult. I think the clerk wants to...
Yeah, with regard, to be fair, when it was found that it was this Reverend Roy Sparks, we had it changed. All the emails and for the account was going to the admin account, so I wasn't seeing it, you hadn't seen it. One of the admin assistants changed it, but thought, because that it had been a mistake, but then I think it was mentioned that somebody had done it as a joke, which is not a very funny joke. So the admin assistant changed it to Mr. Roy Sparks because they thought that the account, that is the name that the account should have been in. And it wasn't until I then saw that and said, no, it shouldn't be under any councillor's name, it should be under, if anybody's, my name. And that's when it was changed. When it was pointed out to me, that's when it was changed. I thought in the first instance it had been changed properly, but the person who changed it from Reverend to Mr. really thought that it should have been in your name. And now all the emails come through to me, I see them all, they've all got my name on them.
So really, Roy, you want to be sort of, the police action should be against, what was his first name?
I think we should be very careful,
Yeah.
quite frankly, in a part of the meeting that is currently an open meeting, not
To mention a
any
name.
allegations about any individual who is not present.
I didn't want this
I
in
agree.
open session, but I was told it had to be in open session on the agenda, so it's being discussed in open session.
Well,
But to be fair, I didn't know what you were going to say, what you were going to say.
Councillor Chester.
I'm having just heard what you've said about the way in which it was not noted that this
Yeah.
was going on, that to me would indicate that there is a problem with our systems, because it should have been picked up in some way and brought to the attention of both Councillor Sparks and the council. So that there is a problem. There
Well,
is
that's
a way
why
in
now,
which things can
yeah.
go wrong in the system.
It was-
That's what I'm trying to say.
What these are, they are sheets that we don't necessarily see, because what we do see is the till receipt from Sainsbury's. And that particular sheet, we don't get to see that, because it used to come through on the admin email, and it used to occasionally get, I think, stapled to.
Yeah.
So
But
are they
it's not
I
a,
don't
it's not a
know.
receipt or anything, it's just a sort of an email that
Are
comes
the
through.
invoices not seen by them?
They're not invoices because it's from the Sainsbury's. So it's a Sainsbury's, you know when you go to Sainsbury's, it's what you get, it's a till receipt. So we see that has all the purchases on, that is what we agree. But this is what comes on the email.
When you say what's on the email, is it a statement or what?
No, it's just an acknowledgement that it's a, you know, we've had a delivery.
How many points we've got at Sainsbury's?
Yeah, that sort of thing. So, as soon as it was picked up, as soon as we were aware of it, it's now coming through me and it's all in my name.
And you say this was changed in January? Right.
But I think the bigger picture now is, Roy, sorry for this, you've opened a can of worms now, because I think Councillor Chapel is absolutely right. You are now suing this council.
I'm considering,
you
yes,
have-
I'm
so
going
you-
to, yes.
So
Yes, I'm going to,
what are you suing the council for? Because I'm not going to be personally liable for anything like that. And if that's the case, if it's going to come where you are now suing us as individuals, then I will resign immediately. Because I'm not going to let that happen to me. And I, without any information that you're sitting there as mayor of this council, suing your own council?
I've asked for things to be done. I brought it up at 2 meetings.
Which 2 meetings were they? Was I there?
I'm not, you were
If
at
I
one.
wasn't there,
You
then I
were
had
certainly
an
at
email.
one. You were certainly at one.
What, that you were going to sue the council?
No, I didn't say I was going to sue the council. I brought up the business of the Reverend Roy Sparks account at 2 meetings.
Yes, I remember that. I remember all that. And I thought it was
Because of,
it was done and
because of
dusted
the
and finished.
awkwardness of all of this for me, I did, in a meeting, together with Councillor Chester and Councillor Chappell, ask Councillor Chappell if he would sort this matter out. But he obviously hasn't sorted anything out. And that, you and I have had emails, and I can dig those emails out, where we have discussed this.
Well, yes, we have.
And I think, you know, I'm
again,
surprised really at the attitude, because...
Well, you say you're surprised at the attitude. Like other councils...
And you knew
around
that
this
was my
table,
intention in one of those emails, because you said there you were disturbed by what I'd said.
My understanding of the matter had been that the issue had been addressed in terms of clearly the situation had ended, it wasn't continuing. As to whether or not action should be taken against whoever was responsible for that is obviously a separate matter, but I have absolutely no information about that at all. I do not know who is responsible. I have no method of knowing who is responsible. Now, I find this situation extraordinarily difficult because you know, the chair of the council is intimating an intention to sue the council as a collective body. I do not see how the council can therefore continue a discussion, because it may prejudice the position of the council if we do so. And in the circumstances, I'm going to move that we move on to the next business and we cease discussing this, because we cannot continue to discuss it against this background. It's impossible.
But there has to be something done about it. And that's...
I asked earlier what it was that you expected to be done about it, and I'm not clear. I don't know what it is.
You were going to follow up and follow this through and investigate this.
As I say, I'm somewhat at a loss as to what it is that one is expected to do. Are you saying that somewhere along the line you want proof of who is responsible with a view to doing something about that individual? Because you know, I'm in no particular position. I can go to the clerk and I can go to the finance officer and I can seek their assistance. But I have no specific knowledge of how this account was set up, by whom or when or anything else.
No.
And I don't know that anybody around this table
Well, I
actually
think it's
does.
time that
But
somebody
I have
did.
made a proposition that we move on, because we cannot continue to discuss this
I
against
think-
the background in which the council is under threat of legal action.
I
That
think-
would be my advice to
I
our
think
council.
it's time that councillors did know.
I'm not saying it isn't,
The
but we
circumstances
cannot
of it.
continue to discuss a matter
No.
where we are being
That's
threatened with
fine.
legal action.
That's fine, we will move on. But
Can I
something
just
has got to
ask
happen.
Two other questions, Wayne.
Go on.
This is only briefly. Firstly, if you're going to sue the council, are you suing yourself as well because you're part of the council?
I'd have to take advice on that.
And secondly, can you continue as mayor if you sue the council?
Probably not. Probably can't continue as a councillor if I sue the council. Those are the issues that will have to be discussed.
Right.
That's all being discussed at the moment. That's all happening at the moment.
Okay.
But, you know,
I
I'm
wanted to clarify that. 'Cause
well, the point I'm making is I'm not prepared to leave this open, and it's yet another thing that popped up and nobody did anything about. It came up at 2 council meetings, nothing happened. There were a couple of emails to Councillor Chappell where he was surprised to hear what I was saying, and he's heard similar things in those emails to what I've said tonight, that I was going to take this further. And we had a conversation.
One thing, telling us that you're suing the council is something entirely different.
As I say, I think Councillor Chappell's right. I think we should move on.
Right, fine.
But I understand your position, and I am sure, Roy, as an honourable man, if you did decide to sue the council, you'd resign from the council. Because I think that's the only way forward, isn't it?
If I sue, I
Yeah.
probably have to, and I will. Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah. but I'm going to make sure that things, if I resign, that something is done about it. It doesn't just then go into hiding again.
No,
that won't happen.
I think, Roy, if that's what you want, then that's what you should do.
Yep.
And I would not blame you.
Yep.
I honestly don't understand why you resigned from the council and resigned from mayor, because the situation is now being sorted and finished with. But I do understand where you're coming from, because obviously it's taken almost 2 years to get it sorted. And I can understand your attitude towards it and your feelings towards it. I just hope that you know, if you do decide to go down that route, you know that it's not anything that I believe any of the council has ever wanted.
And in fact happened before many
Well, yeah,
so
yes.
were even on the council.
Oh, yes.
That's what
Yeah.
makes me so extraordinarily angry.
Yeah.
Is that you're bringing it up now.
It's continued while we're here.
I can understand that, Malcolm, and I, you know, as far as I was concerned,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I thought we dealt with it and finished with.
If it was going to end up like this, it should have been dealt with rigorously by yourself.
In actual fact,
Not by us.
you came on in July of 2016 is when all of you came on, and in fact that started about August of 2016, so you were all just here when it started.
But isn't it something you as a person should have dealt with? Not they left it and left it and left it, and now ending up in a situation.
It's very difficult for me to deal with.
and
That's
why?
why.
It's
That's
about
why I've
your-
spoken
it's
to
about
other
your
people.
account.
That's why I brought it to council twice. It's because it's very difficult for me.
Why?
Why? Because I am both the mayor of the council and the victim in this. That's why it's
Even
difficult.
more reason to chase it, I would have thought.
And then it looks like I'm covering up.
Why? If you're completely
No,
open, there is
to
no
be honest,
cover.
I can't honestly see that, because most of the council meetings now have been recorded, and everybody knows your distaste and disdain of this situation, and I honestly can't see how anybody could ever accuse you of having that
You
situation.
won't find that on any of the recordings, because it's been discussed in closed session before. That's the first time this has been discussed with
Has
the
it always
recorder.
been in closed session?
Yeah, they've
I
been in
had
closed
no
session.
idea.
Yeah, they've been in closed session.
I always thought it
Now,
was.
I proposed some time ago that we move on, and
Yep.
I would like you to call for somebody to second that.
Yeah,
And if
I'll
somebody
second
does, I
that.
want to vote.
Right, yes. Those in favour?
Yeah.
And I'll agree with that myself, yes. Okay, we move on. Please note that in view of the special and/or confidential nature of the business about to be transacted, it is advisable in the public interest that the public be temporarily excluded and they are instructed to withdraw. That's our Standing Order 3C. Can I have a proposer for that, please? Councillor Glenn, seconder, Councillor Chappell. Those in favour? Those against? One against.
As usual.
Yeah. Right, we resume to open session, and could I please, Clerk, have the first proposition?
It's been proposed that we pursue the company for a quotation for outsourcing and have the free financial health check.
We had a proposer,
Me?
Councillor Chesser, we had a seconder,
That was me, wasn't it?
Councillor
I can't remember.
Humphreys.
Councillor
Oh, it was you.
Humphreys,
It was him.
and
It was
all
him.
those in favour, please. And that's everybody. Thank you. The next proposition, please.
I haven't got a proposition as such. What I've got is that the a grievance will be heard with a panel of council appeal, the mayor and the clerk, and an appeal hearing will be arranged.
Right,
That's all I would.
okay, I think that's fine. That,
Yeah.
yes, noted. And then 176402, if you could give us the...
Comments in the second part of the grievance appeal report were noted.
Fine. That's everything done then.
That's everything done.
We then move on to 1765, any other business for report only. I'll go around the room. Councillor Chatwood, Councillor Chester, Councillor Glenn, Councillor Humphreys,
Nothing.
Councillor
Sorry, no.
and I've got nothing either. So with that we close the meeting at 9:45.